Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Financial Planning Explained. I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner, owner of Menninger and Associates Financial Planning. Today's guest is actually going to be for the next 2 weeks, because there's no way in the world we could possibly get this done in 1 week, and there's a lot of different topics within it. And it's family law. And as we all think of family law, unfortunately, or may not think of family law, we think of it as, unfortunately, it's the breaking up of a family, sadly. And, needless to say, as it pertains to financial planning, nobody plans when they get married to get divorced. And if there's any one major disruption to someone's long-term financial plan is getting divorced, and it's a sad thing. Unfortunately, I admit that I divorced, and it was so I hate divorce. But be that as it may, who I have here today is a partner in a law firm, family law, in Pennsylvania. I have Sarinia Feinman, who is a partner of Vetrano and Feinman. And welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's my honor to be here. And to your point of nobody plans for divorce, the reality is that not only do they not plan for it, when they get into the process, it can be a very paralyzing process. It can be a very difficult process. It's a very difficult place to be living, in limbo, not knowing what the next phase of life is going to look like. Yeah. At my firm, we sort of approach family law, we approach divorces with the idea that we can help these people separate their family and still have respect for the family.
Right.
And there is a such thing out there as an amicable divorce, and we strive for that in most cases. And I say most because there's certainly a lot of cases where that's not possible for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And that is one of the things I do pride myself on, is there are a lot of family lawyers out there. And everybody probably knows someone who does some divorce or does some custody work or does some support. And there's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of great litigators, and there's a lot of attorneys who are fabulous at settling cases.
Right.
The list is very narrow of those that are good at both and can morph from within the case, because simply by one party saying, I'm going to represent myself, that can change the course of the case. One party saying, I'm getting this lawyer versus I'm getting that lawyer. And the lawyers that are involved can really change the course of a case as well.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. When I went through mine, 12, 13 years ago, I specifically went for someone who was low-key. You get the sharks, and I just didn't want someone like that because it was just too low-key for me. And I know, and part of the reason why I say I hate divorce, aside from the financial piece, is it tore me up. It tore me up. I can't imagine that it didn't tear up the children. It's a painful process, and nobody wants to fail, and it's a sign of failure, and it's embarrassing. There's a whole lot of different things. So,
divorce, we always say divorce is like death in a way. And you've got to go through, it's the death of the marriage.
Correct.
And you've got to go through those stages of grieving to get through it. And we help our clients to be able to do that. And one of the many ways to do that is not only to set them up with others on the team. And when I say others on the team, I mean financial planners, wealth managers like yourself, getting them an accountant, getting them a realtor if they need it in a case. So we really have a breadth of knowledge and a network out there to be able to set people up for the next phase so they're not going it alone.
That's good. That's good. And I could see that because, we live to a great extent getting less in a patriarchal society where the husband did everything, the finances, the checking, and then all of a sudden the female is thrust into, I've never done this before. And what do I do now? And so I have a soft spot in my heart for that, because when I went through mine, I was also participating in counseling, like group counseling, which I think is absolutely fantastic, and I was basically the only guy, and I can just see what others were going through. And so I have a soft spot for that, as well as widows, because they go through the same thing. But it's good. I didn't realize that. I didn't think about that. But that's great that you have those relationships that you can help your clients with.
And those individuals who this is the first time that they're dealing with a lot of things, the finances, that's the day-to-day, the big picture, planning for my future, planning for my retirement, how close am I to retirement? And those are the different approaches that we would take depending on, I'll say, the kind of divorce it is. So parties that have been married for 10 years and have 2 little children, the goal of that divorce isn't necessarily going to be to set that individual up through their retirement. They have a lot of years left to work, get remarried potentially, get additional education. But the individual that's coming in and I'll say the wife, the mother who did put her career on hold or had no career, and they've been married for 30 years and she raised the children and she did everything, comes in and is almost, and I've seen it many, many times through the years, when I'm asking certain questions, will feel and say, I'm embarrassed, I don't know that answer. And I quickly say, and if I had your husband here and I asked him to name the teachers of all 4 of your children from kindergarten through 12th grade, he'd say, I got to call my wife.
Right.
And so in the best partnerships in the world, we all take on roles. And your role was one thing and his role was another. You shouldn't be upset. You should not be ashamed that you don't know these answers. We'll get these answers. I can get bank statements and find out the information I need. I can get retirement account statements. I don't need you to know the information. But what I do make sure in those cases is when we do get to the point where we have all the information and we are at, I call it the education process of saying, okay, here is what you have. Here's what comprises your marital estate, is I will have those individuals come in and meet with me in person or Zoom, depending on the time that we're talking about, and go through with them a spreadsheet where I'm going through, these are the assets you have, these are the values that they hold from a marital perspective, and this is the bottom line. And we do all of that before we even talk about, okay, this is what a court might do. Here's a settlement proposal that we can make in terms of what the overall division is going to look like, because the goal first is to say and to educate, this is what you have in these various arenas, cash, real estate, retirement, life insurance, so that there is some security and some knowledge, because they really do come in sometimes not knowing at all. So there is that, and I do think once you're armed with the knowledge, that gives, I think for them it's the first step to working maybe with all those other individuals in the future, to feeling empowered and to taking back their lives, really. Power is a key word.
I'm actually dealing with 2 sets right now where unfortunately the female, the mother, the wife, has taken 20 or 30 years off from her career. And now she's thrust into a position where it's tough to start a career in your 50s when you don't have the experience and you haven't really worked much in the last 20 or 30 years. Meanwhile, the spouse is fine. They're making $200,000–300,000 a year, and division of assets down the middle is not always fair, because the higher earning spouse can continue to earn.
Well, and that is exactly, in Pennsylvania, we are not a community property state, and community property is right down the middle, 50-50. Okay. We're an equitable distribution state. And so equitable is based on a series of factors under the law, and factors such as the length of the marriage, the earnings abilities of the parties, who put their career and life sort of on hold while the other one increased their earning potential. Do they have separate estates that are not part of the marital estate that might come into play? You have one individual who's working and will have the ability for however many years to continue to save and continue to put away, while the other individual, even if they go out and get a job at their maximum potential, it's going to be paycheck to paycheck. They're not going to have the opportunity to put away.
Absolutely.
So that's exactly why someone in that situation might come and find themselves in the divorce inequitable distribution and getting a disproportionate share of the assets, like a 55% split or a 60% split. But that'll all be decided, determined, or agreed upon as sort of a package deal with what they're going to get as alimony post-divorce. I'll say this, the silver lining for those individuals who are going through divorce at that stage of life, and we call those sort of the gray divorces, or there's programs out there, and I've done programs for our primary CLE provider, the Pennsylvania Bar Institute, which is a arm of the Pennsylvania Bar Association. But what we call those like divorce over 50 or divorce over 60 programs, the silver lining for those individuals is they really are just dealing with the equitable distribution, the alimony, and it's a financial deal.
That's correct.
Of course, there's emotions that come into it, and certainly do, but the effective lawyers, like myself, I will say, bring people back to the reality of this is a financial decision. I'm not going to let you spend, $10,000 on me to litigate something to fight about the old rocking chair because you rocked your 4 kids in that.
Right.
I'll go get you a different rocking chair. Like, we're not going to get hung up on those types of things because we've got to see the forest through the trees. And, I let them. Everyone needs to be heard, and you've got to let them be heard. But you also have to rein them back in and say, it's a validate. I hear you. I get it. I'm a mom. I have a mom. I have a mother. I get it. I feel for you. But these are the factors that the court's going to apply. The equitable distribution court is going to be looking at these factors. And they're not going to care that your husband decided one day out of the clear blue for no good reason to get a divorce, and that he wants now to marry someone who's the same age as your daughter. And that happens, but there is no factor for that.
Right.
He gets to have a divorce. The divorce code of 1980, it's been a long time, and you don't need a reason for a divorce. It's no fault in Pennsylvania. So
that varies by state.
It varies by state, but I don't even think there's any states any longer that don't have no fault divorce. So Pennsylvania is a no-fault state, and has been since 1980. So in that sense, doesn't have to be a reason. That husband can get up one morning and just say, I just don't want to be married to you anymore. Same as that wife can get up and say the same exact thing. So it's hard, and it's hard to get somebody over the line. The silver lining to that is those kids are grown.
Right.
So we are not dealing with, in those cases, interim issues of custody and child support.
Right.
Those are the cases where you have the younger marriages of people divorcing 10, 15 years in. They get that classic 7-year itch, and that's, between 7 to 10 years is when you see a lot of people, getting divorced. At that point, you're dealing with a whole nother set of issues while we're not setting those people up for their retirement, and this is what you're going to have, and here's your pot, and here's your pile for the rest of your life.
Right.
We are certainly dealing with custody. We're dealing with support in the interim. We're dealing with, post-divorce support. We are still dealing with equitable distribution. I'm not suggesting that we're not, but the goals are different. And those cases generally will kick off with a custody agreement or a custody case where you're going to court, and those can be certainly the most gut-wrenching. That's a little harder to rein your client in to say, if I say, Mike, put a price on how much you're willing to spend on me to fight for one more day with your children, you're going to tell me time with my kids is priceless.
Right.
So that's harder to wrangle in. If I say to you, Mike, we can spend money and go to the support trial, but even in your best case scenario, you're only going to get $200 more a month, and that's $2,400 more a year. You're going to spend way more than that on me. That's easy. That's a business choice. You go, well, I'm not going to spend that. Doesn't make any sense, Sarinia. Why would I do that? Right. And so that's where it becomes. That's the very emotional part. The custody for sure.
Oh, there's no doubt. We need to take a break, and we will be with you in just a few moments. See you soon.
I want to be a contender. I want a warm belly to sleep on.
A big house.
How do I look? Do I look good?
I want to play hard.
My nails done once a month.
I want
a home. I just want a home. I want someone to love.
Last year, more than 30,000 companion animals came to us without homes. 20,000 of them were felines. Let's make some homes together.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
Choosing Medicare coverage can be a very confusing and complicated process. Help is just a phone call away, 856 856-226-4800. As a licensed insurance agent, I'll assist you in making an informed and confident decision on a Medicare plan that meets your needs, lifestyle, and budget. Call me today for a free, no obligation Medicare benefits consultation. 856-226-4800.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hippity hop.
Now that's New Jersey. 130 miles of beautiful beaches. Solid rock. And everything in between.
Look in the window.
Now that's New Jersey.
Welcome back to Financial Planning Explained with my guest, Sarinia Feinman, family law attorney, and boy, that went fast. There's so many different things on the subject that we're going to be able to talk about. Thank goodness we have 2 episodes. A couple things we wanted to get involved in is custody issues, which you talked about a little bit. We may save that for the next episode. Support, alimony, division of assets. But one thing that you brought up in the first portion is you almost made it sound it was subjective. That, well, you know, sometimes it might be 50%, it might be 55, it might be 60. Can you elaborate more on, like, who makes the decision? Is it the courts that make the decision? Is it because, you know, what pushes it to one direction or the other?
Sure. So as I said, there's the equitable distribution
Right.
factors that
Right.
are applied. There are similar factors for alimony post-divorce. Now, there's different terminology. So you have support for a spouse while a divorce is pending. And
Right.
that could be called spousal support
Right.
or alimony pendente lite.
Right.
We call that APL
Right.
for short. So that's based on a guideline calculation, much like child support while
Right.
a divorce is pending. Post-divorce, when we're coming up with that package of equitable distribution and post-divorce alimony, there are factors. And in the first segment, I talked a little bit about what some of those factors were. And of course, not all of the factors are relevant to every single case. A lot of this is knowing the audience. And you asked who makes these decisions. So the court makes the decision if you can't reach a resolution
Right.
and you can't come to an agreement. Of course, an agreement is the best way. These people have to deal with each other in some capacity for the rest of their lives, even those that have the grown children. Because I tell my clients all the time, your children, I hope, don't cease to exist at 18 years old.
Right.
And so you have weddings for those children, you have grandchildren, you have lots of college graduations. I mean, you have a lot of life left to live as co-parents to these even adult children. And you want to, you know, try to be as dignified and respectful in the divorce process as you can be, so that you can preserve that working relationship, whatever it's going to look like,
Right.
in the future, so that you can be in the same room. Because little children, adult children, children that are parents of their own children, there's nothing more that they hate than having to do everything twice. Oh, I graduated college. Oh, I'll have my dinner with my mom, and then I
Right.
have my dinner with my dad. So it's nice when people can really, you know, try to do some of those things together, and they can be in the same room, and it sets that tone. So of course an agreement is always preferred. But if you get hung up, and when I say get hung up, you know, it could be an issue. It might not be, you know, as family lawyers, we are litigators in the sense that we have to go to court. Sometimes it's not the big proceeding. It's not a 5-day trial. It could be, I'm going to a master's hearing. I'm going to a conference. And sometimes that can be used to get some feedback that both lawyers then can take back to the clients and say, okay, we were hung up on this particular issue. We ran it by the hearing officer or the master, depending on where you are, what they call them, and we get some feedback. And that sometimes can help to resolve a case.
Yeah.
So The goal too is, when people hiring me, I go to, so I practice in Pennsylvania, as you know. My office is in Montgomery County. I'm in King of Prussia. And so that's my home county. That's where I'm active in the Montgomery Bar Association. I'm the president-elect right now. I'll be the president of the Montgomery Bar Association.
Congratulations in advance.
In 2022. And so that's my home county, but I practice just as readily in Chester County, Delaware County,
Right.
Philadelphia, Bucks, Berks, Lehigh. I've even gone as far as Monroe County before.
Where's that? That's like all the way up by
It's
Pittsburgh,
far.
isn't it?
No, Erie. I've been to Erie, and that's up by Pittsburgh.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, but that I didn't have to go to Erie. We settled that. But so knowing, I will say this: every county has their own nuances. People are shocked to find that out.
I was going to ask that as you beat me to the punch.
They do have their own nuances, and they have their own proclivities, and different masters will go to different, favor certain things. And, like I'll say, the deal that you might get with the same set of facts in Chester County might be different than the deal you're going to get in Montgomery County.
What drives that? Is it, I would say, the attorney general of the particular county, the judges? What drives the nuances between one county and another?
So it mostly would be the masters and how they are viewing it. Now, I will say there's generally consistency among the masters within a county. So it's not like you're going to go to Chester County and there's 3 equitable distribution masters. Now we're calling them hearing officers. That's
Right.
a newer development. But there was 3 of them there, and they're pretty consistent with how they handle cases and certain calls that they'll make on certain issues. And so, with that set of facts that we've been talking about that individual, that woman who's, 30-year marriage and hasn't worked in 30 years
Right.
and raised the children, and, maybe the most she can get out there and earn, if she's going to get a job, depending on her age, if she's even going to be required to get a job, or required to be assigned an earning capacity, even if she doesn't get the job. That, those set of facts in Chester County might get her a higher disproportionate share, a longer duration of alimony. There are other counties sometimes where they're known to necessarily not give as much alimony or not give it for as long of a duration. A lot of people like to approach the alimony as, I get 1 year of alimony for every 3 years of marriage.
Right, I've heard that.
A lot of people have heard that. Now, Bucks County will apply that hard and fast. That is their 1 year of alimony.
It's not a guideline.
They apply
right.
that hard and fast.
Okay.
The other counties don't necessarily do that, but they use it as a guide for sure. And there could be extenuating circumstances that make them go more or that make them go less. And that will be impacted based on the size of the estate. In a situation where there is a $10 million estate and both parties are getting, at least $5 million each.
Right.
That's probably, as long as everything's not tied up in ventures that nobody can access,
Right.
And there is some liquidity to it, that's not probably going to be an alimony case again. But you got to look at what are the incomes, and is there
Right.
an individual still working? You've got to look at the so it is. I say that's why people hire me, because I know what the masters or the judges are going to do. I go to these counties.
That
I
helps.
speak on programs. I know what they're going to do. So when a client comes to me and says, hey, I want to push. I think I should get 70% of this estate. And I look at them and I say, well, you're not going to get that. You want to keep going and going, we can keep going and going. It's, that's your call. But you're going to spend money. You're most likely not going to get the result you want, and you're going to be unhappy. And my hot tip always on that, when I'm talking to younger lawyers and newer lawyers, is if you are stuck in that situation and you stay in the case, just make sure you get your retainer up front, because they're not going to be happy in the end.
You're right, exactly.
And they're not going to want to pay you because they're not going to like the result, but they were never going to like the result because they wanted something that was not based in reality, or,
Right.
or what the court was going to ever do.
So it's funny you say that. I've actually came across in mine with the master, and she was known as Mindy the Man-Hater. Okay, I had her. But the question that I really wanted to ask you, back up, that is why I also sought out an attorney who was laid back and practical, because one of the concerns that I had is if you had 2 pit bulls going against each other, while I agree that the one attorney is there to represent and get the best deal for theirs, the other is representing to get the best deal. But if the two attorneys can't come to terms, and that's what I really like about you, you're so practical, you like to teach, and you're much more involved in part of it as opposed to the pit bull attorney. The question I have is, let's say I'm married and I live in Delaware County and I decide to move out and I go to Montgomery County. Is it Delaware or Montgomery, or is it based upon who files?
So the easy answer, the quick answer is it's going to be where the marital home is located. So it's going to be in Delaware County in that situation. But if everybody moves out of Delaware County, listen, the counties are very inundated with cases all around. Right. No county is going to keep a case where nobody lives there. They're going to punt that as fast as they can, and they're going to reduce their docket. Right. But generally speaking, it's going to be where the marital domicile is what we call that is going to be. Now, if you move out and you live in Montgomery County for 2 years before anybody moves forward, and you came to meet with me, and we were weighing the facts of the case, I would say to you at that point, because she had enough time to have filed, it's been sufficient time past the time of separation, and so I would say, listen, we could pick. And so representing you, we might say, hey, let's file in Montgomery County for these reasons, might be more beneficial to you, or no, we want to file in Delaware County because if that might be more beneficial to you. So, we have to look at what the facts and circumstances are of each case. But generally, you don't, it's rare that you do get that opportunity to forum shop. Yeah, right. And that, because they are generally, it's the marital domicile. And if it's happening in, a reasonable amount of time, within like 6 months after separation, then that's what you're, generally going to have to do.
Well, we are wrapping up. We're going to have to pick this up next week. But what we're going to talk about next week is want to get into a little more of the monetary piece. We'll talk about division of assets, things to think about, alimony, things to think about. And the tax law has changed. So now, instead of alimony being tax deductible to the giver and taxable to the receiver, they flipped that, and I have some questions that I want to ask you about that. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Good. And I'm looking forward to coming back next week, and we're going to pick this up kind of where we left off, but we're going to go into some other topics. So Sarinia Feinman, I thank you very much for coming here this week, and we're going to pick this back up. And thank you for tuning in with us, and we will see you next week. And again, I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner of our show, Financial Planning Explained. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week.